What's up, mi gente? Welcome to my Mondays podcast. Let's overthink it with your host, Elefante Blanco, with Lo que está caliente, where we talk about psychology in all areas of life, in politics, current events, and everywhere. So thank you for tuning in, taking time out of your busy schedule to connect with me today. Today we're going to talk about psychology in the area of sports competition. Specifically, should transgender women compete in biological women's sports? And at the end of this episode, I will share one recommendation that can solve this whole controversy. But before we do, we're going to start with a joke, the joke of the day like we usually do. Are you ready? All right. What if soy milk is just regular milk introducing itself in Spanish? All right. That was a bit of a different joke there, but hopefully you understand. If you know a little bit of Spanish, soy, means I am. Okay. All right. So let's jump into the topic. So transgender women compete in biological women's sports. And like I said, at the end of this episode, I'm going to share one recommendation that can solve this whole controversy, I think, in my opinion. I think I want to be clear because in terms of how I'm going to treat this topic, in terms of I'm going to treat it with respect, and it's not going to be, a transgender bashing session or anything like that. All humans deserve to be treated with dignity, I believe. So I think it's important to define what a transgender woman is, because I know a lot of people, not everybody knows what that is. And a transgender woman is a person who was born as a biological male who has felt they have been in the wrong body, usually for a long time. I have a few transgender women friends, and they have told me directly that they have been feeling like this even as early as when they were 5 years old, 7 years old, 10 years old. I can think of them in my head right now who they are. And, think about that. That's pretty early in their lives that they were feeling this way. A trans woman doesn't necessarily have to have removed their genitals in order to be a trans woman. Just the mere feeling and psychological self-conviction that they are a woman is sufficient for them to identify as a trans woman. So in our psychology Bible that we call the DSM-5, there is a mental disorder that is associated with transgender people, and it's called gender dysphoria. It's kind of a pretty intense name, dysphoria. So I guess instead of euphoria, it's dysphoria. It's incongruent. That's kind of like the root of the word "dis" begins to come from. And you don't really have to have gender dysphoria to be considered trans. But many times, if you want to obtain like a sex change surgery, your insurance would require you to be diagnosed with that, to receive certain services like puberty blockers, hormones to grow your breasts, change your voice, and things like that. So I remember when I was in the military, they required it there too, for the service member to be diagnosed prior to, and to be honest, for them to be taken seriously. So I got to be honest with that. I didn't really see that many trans people in the military, but I do remember one time I saw a captain in the Navy in our training. He was sitting down in the front row. I should say she was wearing the summer whites with the big, captain shoulder boards and a very solid neck. And that was a little bit confusing to me because this person was wearing a white skirt. So I just knew something was different about this person. As soon as he started talking, she was answering a question from one of the instructors. It was a very bass-like voice, and it was very obvious that this person was born a biological male to me. Immediately I recognized that. I still treated her with dignity and all, but it was pretty distracting, to be honest with you. And by the end of the training, we kind of got used to her, and even talked to her during her lunch break, and it was cool, and it was interesting to hear her background. So how do you get diagnosed with gender dysphoria? Well, in the DSM-5 says that you have to have at least 2 of these symptoms. For example, experience that you don't feel like you're assigned sex at birth. You don't feel like you're assigned sex at birth for at least 6 months. You have to have a strong desire to be another gender and a desire to have those other traits. Okay. Also, a strong desire to get rid of your sex traits, a strong desire to be treated as such, and a strong belief that you have the reactions and feelings of another gender. And the main one that usually comes with all mental health disorders is that it must cause a clinical distress or life impairment in different areas of life. Like whether it's at home, at work, at school, socially with others, there has to be an impairment there, or the feelings of distress in those areas. So I ask you, do you have gender dysphoria? Again, you don't have to be a trans person. You don't have to have that gender dysphoria to be a transgender person. For that reason, a big controversy has been happening in our society, in our world pretty much, for that matter, about biological males who feel that they are women and decide to compete in women's sports. So much so that maybe you have been tracking in the news that a couple of ex-NBA players are signing up for the WNBA draft to play there in their league because they're saying that they feel like they're women. You can tell that they're not necessarily being very serious about that, but that they want to prove a point because a recent controversy happened where this WNBA player, I think her name is Sophie, first name, can't remember her last name, put out a post saying that she defends women and girls in women's sports, saying that only biological women should play there because of safety and other reasons. She put out that post. Again, this is a WNBA female player, and it created some controversy and some back and forth in the WNBA and the other players. As you probably know, many WNBA players are lesbians and are LGBT, part of the LGBT community, of course. And they were not necessarily in agreement with her post. And so in order to, I guess, show, maybe making a political statement, these 2 male ex-NBA players are saying that they're going to sign up for the WNBA draft because they're saying, hey, you can't deny me. I identify as a woman now. And that can be very risky. If they really get drafted, which I doubt is going to happen, it can be dangerous. Mm-hmm. We're talking about this 6'5", 6'8" guys, 250 pounds or more, competing in the WNBA. That can be a very dangerous situation, I think, with the elbows and just the size in general and other factors. So that's just one example that I wanted to share. Maybe you have seen it in the news lately. We'll see what happens. I think the WNBA is having a very difficult time defining what the W is in WNBA, how to define that, So, of course, this stands for a woman, but what is a woman? How does the WNBA define it? So I'll leave that there to brew a little bit. So another thing is that we have seen in many instances women being disadvantaged by trans women who are breaking all-time records for women, like for example in track and field, in swimming, in weightlifting, volleyball, and other sports. So let me show you one example. In 2022, trans woman Leah Thomas from the University of Pennsylvania won the NCAA Women's 500-yard freestyle swim championship. She also set records in the 100, 200, and 500 Ivy League championship games. All right. Now, as a quick update, the University of Pennsylvania has done the right thing and began not allowing transgender women in their female sports teams. So they also revised their records and they apologized to athletes who competed against her. That is the right thing to do. Now, she's not the only trans woman beating women in their competition. This other one her name is Laurel Hubbard from New Zealand, set women records by lifting close to 250 pounds above her head and winning the championship title during that event. She also set Masters world records in an older age group category, in a different category. So here's a clip of Laura Hubbard.
For the headline-making and barrier-breaking weightlifter, all she wants to do is compete.
I am who I am. I'm not here to change the world. I just want to, be me and just, do what I do.
43-year-old Laurel Hubbard, who transitioned from male to female in 2012, is considered a serious medal contender after being selected to represent her home country, New Zealand, at the Tokyo Games.
Okay, and I also want to share with you another clip from September 2022 when a trans girl, volleyball player, hit another girl when she was spiking in volleyball. She hit her in the face, and the girl that got hit, her name is Peyton McNabb, and here's the clip. I think that what you can gather from this video is not just that women can only be disadvantaged by males who want to compete in their sports, but that it can also be dangerous. They can also be put in danger. Because a male spike, of course, the strength and everything that comes with it, it's not the same as a female spike. Also, when a trans woman beats a woman in sports, many things can be on the line. It could be that they could be missing out on scholarships because the trans women got it instead of them. They could lose on recognition after having trained for years and years and years. To have a trans woman beat them, it's not fair. And also monetary championship prizes when you compete in different competitions. So there are different things, impacts that biological women can negatively be receiving because of the influx of trans women, trans girls in sports. Do you know what happened to Peyton McNabb, who got hit in the face with that volleyball spike? She suffered a concussion and a neck injury after that. It was really unnecessary. She didn't even have to be put at that risk. So that's what happened to her. So what do my transgender friends tell me? Well, they say people who don't support us are transphobic. They say that. They also say, well, the NCAA and the Olympics had it under control because you couldn't have a certain amount of testosterone that was above a certain level to compete. Okay? After a year, they'll say, after a year, our thigh muscles become smaller. They decrease in size. But in general, it really remains higher than in women. Even when they have a reduction in their thigh muscles, in general, when it comes down, it's still bigger than a biological woman's thigh. Also, the height is another thing for consideration. Men usually higher, have a longer stride, their hand grip is stronger. It's actually about 35% stronger after a transgender woman transitions. Their hand grip is still about 35% stronger. So it doesn't really change much. So, that is what I share with them. And I understand that what they're telling me that, let me be a little more clear. I understand what they were telling me, but I think that they were missing many things that would advantage a male over a female in these competitions. It's not just testosterone. That's not the only factor. We all know that, prior to puberty, it's really not that big of a deal in terms of testosterone. And that's why you see a lot of co-ed leagues, like kids soccer leagues or boy and girls, play together. But once puberty hits, things change, of course. So, and you can see how males have a 20-fold, when you look at the studies, males have a 20-fold increase in testosterone and muscle development, and they tend to have 57% greater muscle size, okay? 45% more lean body mass, 33% more lower muscle mass, 40% more upper body mass in their torso areas, and just basically in general strength, compared to a biological woman, is about 109% more strength. And also longer bone size, femurs and other body bones. So definitely all of this really impacts sports competition. It does. And it gives males a greater advantage, okay? Greater athletic advantage. So I got these details from a researcher, medical doctor, who actually happens to be a part of the LGBT community and identifies as gay. Here's a short clip from him where he outlines some of the biological advantages of males over females. There are some that I've already mentioned, but it doesn't hurt to hear them again. Here's a clip.
So on average, males have 45% more lean body mass, 33% more lower muscle mass, and 40% more upper body muscle mass. Men naturally have more muscle strength, longer bone lengths, like in your arms and legs, 83% more force in their tendons, and as we briefly mentioned earlier, increased respiratory and lung functions, as well as enhanced cardiac functions. So whether you're an Olympic track star or you're someone who's learning basketball for the first time, once puberty comes, males generally innately have a natural biological advantage.
Okay. Another interesting detail that Dr. Ryan shared later on his video was that a study showed that even adolescent boys going through puberty, ages around 14 and 15, outnumber elite female athletes when their records were compared. Like different run records and things like that. Let me show you the table that shows some of those sporting events there. Okay, let me get that on the screen there. So, all right, so you have it there on the screen. So the event is 100 meters. You can see it on the left side, 800 meters, 1500 meters, long jump, and the discus throw. And you can see under the schoolboy table that the male record for schoolboys ages around 14, 15, as you can see right there, is usually a little bit faster and a little bit longer than elite female adult records. Let's take the first and the last one, for example, the 100-meter run. The record for schoolboys is to do the 100-meter run in 10.2 seconds. For elite female athletes, the record is 10.49 seconds, so it takes them longer. And you can look at the long jump at the bottom. For schoolboys is 7.85 meters, and the record for women, adult women, elite women, is 7.52, so it's a little bit shorter. And the discus throw for schoolboys is 77.68, and for females is 76.8 meters, so it's a little bit shorter. So you can see the differences in this. And of course, these boys are going through puberty, and this testosterone is very high. Or this is definitely increased a lot from when they were kids, when they were before puberty. So that's a good example to look at. And also I wanted to talk, kind of switch a little bit into going back in time. Did you know that in the 70s and the 80s, the German Olympic female teams were injected with higher levels of testosterone to give them an advantage? Since we're talking about testosterone in boys and puberty, I think this is a nice segue. So it did happen. Female athletes, I say again, in the German teams back in the 70s and 80s were injected with testosterone to do better in their competitions. Check this out.
In the 80s, we had the East German system where female athletes were filled full of testosterone, and it made them unbeatable. So for nearly a whole generation, the East German women totally dominated in almost all female sports at Olympic and world level. But there were many British that came fourth and fifth and sixth, and no one's ever heard of them because they didn't pick up a medal, which they should have done. So I feel quite passionately that I just don't want to see that happen to a whole generation of female athletes again.
All right, wow. Ooh, messed up. Not fair. I mean, it is kind of odd that we have to explain this and prove it scientifically in order to go back to fairness. But we must. So, is it really transphobic to use science as a support mechanism for setting policy and establishment of fairness? I say this with compassion, to be honest with you, because I don't think so. I don't think that necessarily we have to go to these lengths, but I guess it's one way to get it done. And I don't think it's transphobic. Because, the facts are the facts, and especially when they're backed up with science, it becomes an objective understanding of things. Think about it. Even this medical doctor, Dr. Ryan, who is gay, is willing to be objective and realize that there are really biological differences between men and women. But here's the good news. In 2022, 2025, and 2026, the International Olympic Committee and the NCAA is no longer using testosterone threshold to allow trans women to participate in women's sports. They're not doing that anymore. So trans women are not authorized anymore. And if you want to participate in a particular sport, whatever sex you were assigned at birth is the standard to compete. And that is fairness. So as we wrap up, what is the solution for the transgender athletes controversy? Specifically, transgender women who still want to compete in women's sports. Well, I think the solution is simple. And again, I say this with sensitivity. The solution is that they establish their own transgender sports leagues to compete in. That way, everybody is on the same playing field, no pun intended, and they still get an opportunity to participate and compete in sports. As a matter of fact, I would even call on the Olympic Committee and the NCAA to create a third category of competition, the transgender category. I don't like it that right now as we speak, I don't know if you knew this, transgender males, biological women who transition to male, can compete in men categories in the Olympics. I think that's inconsistent. That should not be happening. And instead, I think the best way forward is for trans to have their own category. That way, all transgender athletes around the world feel that they're being recognized, have something to look forward to, and are being seen and heard. All right? That is it for today, my friends. And as always, we have the word of the day. All right? To finish up this podcast. So the word of the day is esoteric. Esoteric. Do you know what it is? I won't tell you because like my teacher used to say, if I tell you, you won't remember it. But if you look it up, you remember it for the rest of your life. All right? So thank you, mi gente. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. And I will see you next time, okay? Take care.